Hello, and welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk to writers from all genres and mediums about themselves, their work, and advice for other writers. I'm your host, special host today, Chris Bondi, and our special guest today, Paul Zeidman, who I'm sure you recognize. Welcome to your own podcast, Paul.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. It's nice to be here. It's very different to be on this side of the microphone.
And yet you're in the same room.
Well, close by anyway.
As we start every podcast, or how you usually start every podcast, have you read anything or watched anything interesting lately?
Great question. I don't think we've really had a chance to watch anything just because we've been kind of busy. But I've been reading a lot of scripts from other writers that I know because this past Friday on my blog, Maximum Z, I posted the 2025 script showcase. And that is screenplays, TV pilots, and short film scripts that I had writers send in to me, and it lists all their information, including their contact info. And so, as I was putting that together, if a script certainly appealed to me, I would reach out to the writer, say, "Hey, this sounds like fun. I'd like to read it. Can you send it?" And they would send it. So it was a total of 89 scripts total, and I have at least five or six in my reading queue, and I've already been through one so far. So only five or so more to go, and I'm sure I'll probably go through the list again and find another handful to read. But it's great that I'm a big supporter of supporting the screenwriting community, and it's great to see all this fantastic talent and original material out there. And I'm trying to help promote all these folks as much as I can.
How many years have you been doing that?
The showcase, want to say, I think I started it either in 2020 or 2021, and then I was doing it twice a year. But I think as of 2023, it just got to be too exhausting. So then I just kind of pulled it back to once a year, which I think is works out for the best because I do it at the end of the year. So it's a kind of a nice end of the year wrap up thing.
And I do have to say that I assume that you've mentioned it before, but if not, the stack behind you. Have you talked about the stack behind you and what that represents?
Well, I haven't talked about it directly, but anybody who's been following the podcast and especially watching the episodes on YouTube, right behind my left shoulder, there is a big stack of books with a couple of hats on top. That is the top half of all the books that I've read this year for the podcast. That is about one of the, say, 27 or so books. So I'm not going to count them right now, but that is from this year. And the one that's kind of below it, that's from the year before. So yes, I still have all these books sitting around the house. But I think it's just a great, gradual accumulation of books to show the passage of time and also my dedication to having these guests on. Because as I always tell the guests, I think it's very important for the guest to read the book because it makes for a better interview and for better questions.
Uh, how many do you read a week?
Usually about one, because when the year started, I was trying to space out the podcast to every other week, but I kept getting requests from publishers and lit agents saying, "Hey, I've got this client who has a great new book. Can you squeeze them in?" I didn't want to say, "Yes, come back to me in 4 months." So I just kind of had to abandon the every other week release schedule. So then it was back to once a week. So I think probably since April or May, I've been reading them about one a week. So, but I'm done for this year, and I already have my stack of three or four books that I'm ready for January.
Is there any, this is really putting you on the spot. Is
Mm.
there any, which I plan to do a few times, is there any book that really, or script or something that really stood out to you this year?
I can't really say about scripts just because I've read so many, and the books have been more prevalent. There's one from a couple of weeks ago called The Hope Not Plot, which is by David R. Stokes, and that is about it's the events leading up to and after the death of Winston Churchill. So it's a I guess you call it historical fiction, but it was really good and it was a really good interview. And I enjoyed a lot of the guests that I had on the podcast this year. A lot of them are really talented writers, and it is such a wide variety of material and topics that and everybody, what was really nice is that a lot of the guests have always said, like, this was the most entertaining interview I've ever been able to be part of, and I take that personally. So that was always nice to hear.
I am, uh, I'm glad that you've enjoyed it. I guess this might be the time that we say how we know each other. So
If you
Paul,
want to.
do you want to? or we could not. Do you want to point at the wall?
Okay, so this wall to my right, that is the
Which
wall
is
that is
that
sep
one?
yeah. No, no, your other wall.
No, no, no. Truly, oh, you're right. That wall.
I know this setup pretty well. So for those who haven't figured it out by now, Chris is my wife. And so we are in the same house, and there's this thinnish wall separating our two offices. So I'm here and she is over there. So there might be a little bleed through, but I don't think so. But it just adds to the total realism of the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. And what I can say is the person who hears you do the podcasts regularly is I always know when you're recording a podcast, besides the timing, is that if I'm not catching the timing, you are much more upbeat and frankly much louder when you are
Well,
recording the podcast. So back to the official podcast.
hmm
So actually I have watched things without you this week, which is
I'm sure you have.
I have watched so I watched Wake Up Dead Man in the theater with you, and then I
Hmm
watched it 2 nights ago with our daughter.
hmm
Our daughter wasn't able to see it in the theater and back for a visit for the holidays, and so um watched it one more time. Still enjoyed it the second time as well.
Was it different? No, even though I think remember you said after we saw it in the theaters, you already kind of knew who
I knew
who who it was, but was it different watching it from the beginning?
it was because I there were I still very much enjoyed it. The I what I would say is if somebody is a fan of reading mysteries and particularly locked door mysteries, then it follows the beats really well of that. So there's still twists in there either way, and there's still things that I didn't catch, but some of the things were very much the beats of what that is. So
Well, I
quite
also
enjoyable.
well, I was talking to our daughter about it, and you mentioned it too about the jump scares. I didn't remember them at all from seeing theaters, but
It's she's a person unto herself. So enough about that. The most
okay.
we'll ever give away about our child. So you, I know, occasionally refer back to your background, but not a lot. Why don't we jump back to the start of, did you always know you wanted to be a writer? What is it that got you interested even before writing? What was like, where did you start from and going forward?
Okay. I don't think I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I loved to read. I was reading from a very early age, and I just loved all these kinds of stories. And I think what kind of really pointed me towards film was I had a teacher in high school, Mr. Truitt, for film appreciation, and he showed us like all these, pretty almost like a movie from each decade, starting with Birth of a Nation, and I don't. Oh, and then we watched. I think we watched The General, Buster Keaton's The General, which is one of my favorites, and then we watched Citizen Kane, which is absolutely one of my favorites. We also watched Rebel Without a Cause, and I think an old Gene Kelly musical, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And I remember there was like one or two others, and I just loved it, and I thought it was great. But there was really no outlet for or opportunity for me to really learn about screenwriting. And I think it wasn't until I got into college and took a couple of film classes and just thought I would love to try this. And I remember, and then when we moved to California, that I remember driving around trying to find somewhere that sold screenwriting software, and nobody had any idea what we were talking about. And so we found it's not there anymore. In Sausalito, the Writer's Store actually had a store, and they were selling at the time it was called Script Thing, and we got that. And I think the first thing I ever wrote was like a 10-page short, just for the hell of it. And that kind of led to where I am now. And then scripting was bought by Movie Magic, which is what I had for a long time. And I didn't take any classes. I just read a lot of scripts. I read a lot of screenwriting books. And then scripting was bought by Movie Magic. And then a couple of years ago, I won a copy of Final Draft in a contest, so I've been using that, and it helps. And it just I like as you know, I just love it. I love coming up with all my stories and all the countless drafts and rewrites that I do, and you know hoping that one of these days it all pays off.
Um, how many scripts do you have happening at one point, and what stages are they in?
Um, well, I always have one that I'm working on primarily, and there's always a handful that are in various stages. Like one or two just might be an idea, and some might be a few scene ideas written down. I'd say it can be anywhere ranging from like three at a time to maybe six at a time, but there's always like the one that's my big focus.
How many do you have happening right now?
Well, I have one that I'm trying to finish the outline for. And then part of my plan for next year is to at least have one to two drafts of that. But I'm also going to take two of my previous scripts because I want to do a big overhaul on them because they've done well. And I'm fortunate enough I got a manager this year, and he and I agree that the scripts are good, but they have a lot of potential to be a lot better. And he already has places that he wants to send them. So hopefully both of those will attract attention. And he also had a great talk with him last week that talking about the new one, and he wants to be very hands-on in terms of critiquing and offering feedback rather than just saying, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that," or kind of like telling me what to write, more like, "Here's my thoughts on what you have so far." So, and that was really helpful, and it's great to hear as a writer that knowing that you always have someone there to who knows the craft and is willing you know uh, to help you out on it.
Um, what I'm glad. I am really glad you have them. Um, what is it that got you to, you said moving to California, but uh what is it that got you to really start realizing like this is where you want to go and this is where I mean, you've really dedicated quite some time to it. What is it that, all right, maybe I should ask it a different way. Once you decided that that's what you were going to do, that you were going to focus on screenwriting, I mean, I can tell you from the outside, it's like it was a aha moment that seemed like it was always meant to be.
Hmm.
Did it feel that way for you? That you like, oh, now I've arrived at what my purpose is?
Do you mean in terms of just writing overall, or I think, but I think I always say like, because I love to write and I love the movies, and I think it just took a while to make the connection that you can combine the two. And I think once I was able to start learning about it, because it, I didn't go to film school. I didn't take any screenwriting courses in college. It was really just kind of more of this is something that really appeals to me and I want to try it. And you of all people know how much how much time and effort I've dedicated to doing this. And the results have been slow, but they've been gradually happening. And also, what's really been nice is that I've been able to make a lot of connections within the screenwriting community, both a lot of established writers and a lot of other writers. I'm not going to say aspiring because we are already writing, but I think that writers who are still working on trying to break into the industry in some capacity.
Well, that's, your connections and the people you're working with. Can you talk a bit about the writing groups that you've been in part of and how that
Um,
has either helped or,
Oh,
affected
it's
you?
it's been a huge help. Because when I started, I didn't know anybody, especially not being in Los Angeles. And then I think it was in 2000, I went to, oh, because I was working at a radio station here in San Francisco, and Richard Walter, who at the time I think was the dean of the screenwriting department at UCLA, he had a book tour. And so one of his stops was at the talk show I was a producer on. And I got to talking with him, and he gave me a copy of his book. And then read that and just started. I think that kind of helped push me towards like, oh, you could actually do this. And I know because you were working, I think it was might have been Kaiser at the time, and we went down and you had your meetings, and I was not going to sit in a hotel all day. So I got in the rental car and I drove to UCLA to see Richard and had a great afternoon talk with him. And I think that really did it. And then he said that he also did this like a 2 day seminar like a couple of times a year, I think, in one of the neighborhoods. Uh, and so I went down and had a great time. And turns out there were a few other people from San Francisco and the Bay Area there, and they had a writing group. And so after I came back, one of the woman who headed it, she called me and said, "Oh, you were there, and so was I, and a few of us others were there. We'd love to have you, come to see our writing group, see what you think." And so I went. And they were really nice people, and I was part of that pretty much until the group fell apart because some people moved away, excuse me, and some people just lost interest in writing. And so, but I kept going and tried to set up another writing group, but that didn't work out. And then tried another writing group that was more of like a table read thing, and that I did that for a couple of months. But for the most part, since then, it's just been a lot of people who I've connected with online and know primarily through social media. And it's a huge boon because everybody has the same experiences in writing, and they know the ups and the downs, and they're not going to they're not going to sugarcoat their criticism. They're not going to say it just to make you feel better. If they think something's not working, they're going to tell you, and that's probably the best help that a writer can get.
Um, you said that reading was incredibly helpful. How about how much of consuming movies itself, both classical or well, let's start with that. Like how much of the amount of movies you consume, because you and I have very different movie tastes,
Yes, we do.
that's occasionally overlap.
Mhm.
Um, how much has that informed your writing or what you focus on?
I think for the writing, it's really about seeing the script play out on screen because I do this seminar talking to people. A lot of them are people who have not written a screenplay at all, but want to know how. And I always say, well, write something you would want to watch, and that try to watch something from a writing perspective. Can you see where certain elements of the script are in play? Here's the statement of theme, here's the inciting incident, here's the end of Act One, and so on and so on. And I think maybe with the stuff I've seen many, many times that I see that a lot easier than something I'm seeing for the first time. And so I think just watching a lot of movies, you kind of start to see the patterns and all the plot points and the elements of the script play out on screen. And I think that helps me because when I write a story, I try to incorporate the plot points according to how they should be, but also I try to put my own spin on them so it doesn't seem like a blatant ripoff of something you've seen before.
I just realized as you're talking about this, there's sections of your background you're not sharing. Um,
Okay.
what did you do in high school as a job?
Well, I had a lot of jobs.
You know
But
what I'm talking about.
well, I did work at a movie theater, if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, because it was a summer job, and well, I didn't. But a lot of people think, oh, you work at a movie theater, you just get to sit around and watch movies. No, you have to deal with the customers who are there to watch the movies, and that I didn't get to watch as many movies as you might think. I got to see a lot of parts of the same movie over and over again because you had to go in and make sure the doors were closed, or you had to go and clean up the theater. But I had a great time doing it, I think the benefit was that working for this theater chain, that I was able to go to a lot of movies at other theaters because we had a lot of pass systems set up. So my manager would call this other theater and say, "Hey, we have two people for this, 5 o'clock screening of whatever," and myself and another person would go and see a movie, and it was great.
And then what was your job when you moved to California?
My
Or what was
job.
your internship?
Oh, I worked at an ad agency, but they also dealt with a couple of studios. So, uh, we, so you and I got to go. We got a lot of passes to a majority of really crappy movies. Uh, But we also got to see a couple of good ones, and also Disney was one of their clients. So I know we went to see Aladdin and I know I saw the Mighty Ducks. I can't remember if you went to see
I
that
did
one. You
not.
did not. Okay. But they also had a lot of swag and merch. So like I remember getting like the genie from Aladdin. I got like three t-shirts because at the time I only had or we only had two nephews and a niece for my oldest brother's kids and they were really little and so that was an easy Hanukkah present that year.
So I guess my point is that there's been a ongoing
There's always
movie
been some
theme.
kind of movie element.
Yes, there's
Yeah,
always been some kind of movie element.
true, true.
Uh, so so you know that's you've done a lot to get you to this point. Um, and earlier this year, you were able to have one of your short movies or one of your short scripts start a production process.
Hmm.
Can you give a, I know that you've talked about it very loosely, but can you talk a bit more about the short that you did earlier this year?
Yeah, sure. So I think coming on now, like about 6 years ago, I wanted to try writing a short, and but I also wanted to write it with the intention of making it at the time myself. So I came up with something that I thought was a relatively simple but entertaining concept, and I like to say I wrote it from a producer's point of view. How could you make this as inexpensively as possible? So there's four characters, one location, two rooms in a house, maybe an exterior shot. And I wrote it and I polished it and I got some great feedback from friends about it. And I had no idea what to do with it then. And so I had connected with a local director on social media and met with him and his producing partner. And they gave me an estimated budget of what they thought it would cost. But at the time, I was also working on a script with a producer on the East Coast for his micro budget feature, and I'd been giving him updates about that because he asked what else I'd been working on. And so when I told this producer how much their budget was going to be, he said, "Why is it that much? That's twice as much as you need." And so I said, "That's what they said." And he said, you don't need that amount of crew, you don't need that much funding." But in the end, it all fell apart anyway. So it was for the best. And then I went to a film festival and reconnected with a friend of mine who's also a director in addition to a writer. And she was one of the people I'd gotten feedback on the script on. And she said, "Are you still working on that short?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, if you're still looking for a director, I'd love to do it." Because she'd made several shorts, but she hadn't done a comedy. And so that was coming up on 2 years ago now. And so in 2024, I was looking into trying to set up the crowdfunding to do it, but her schedule kept getting busier and busier, so it kept pushing back the crowdfunding. And so finally, in April of this year, I launched the crowdfunding, and it went really well. We got to 52%, which at the time was great. So we were able to cover the production of the short, and as you well know, we filmed it here in the house, and
As I well know.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And so that was the end of June, and so then it went to the editor who did a great job on it, and then I had to put together another crowdfunding for post-production, which is going on now, and it's also in the hand of the sound mixer who's hopefully working their magic on it. And so what's great about the crowdfunding is that we're already at 68%. So we still have like another month and a half to go. So hopefully, if anybody who's listening to or watching this wants to chip in, it's Indiegogo, and it's just put in SHECKY, SHECKY post production. It's the only thing that'll come up, and you'll see a little silhouette of a guy on a stage with a microphone. And if you can chip in a couple of bucks, we've got tier rewards, and so anywhere from $10 to $1,000, preferably the thousand, but I'm not going to be picky. But whatever you can contribute is great because I like to say, you're supporting the indie filmmaking community, you're supporting the screenwriting community, and if you really love really, really bad jokes, this is definitely the short for you.
As the person who heard those bad jokes over and over and over again, I would say that it wasn't only your protagonist that was being haunted by a ghost with bad jokes. Um, what is so your can you give the log line? now that I've semi
Oh, sure,
ruined
sure.
it.
So, okay, so it's called Shecky, and I like to call it a thrill-omedy, a thriller comedy. And the logline is that a new homeowner discovers he's being haunted by the ghost of a comedian who won't stop telling the same jokes over and over again.
So I like to think of it, especially at this time of year, as it's the ghost of bad jokes past.
Oh,
So it is very, very, very holiday appropriate to be supporting your crowdfunding.
oh, well, I would say it's good all year round, but because bad jokes are timeless. But I think what's great is that because I don't like, I don't like horror, but I really like horror comedy, and so I wanted to write something that was, I guess, horror adjacent, and I just thought this was the best way to.
I'm going to disagree with you. I do think that you like horror. You don't like slasher.
I don't like gore.
You
Maybe
don't
I'll put it
like
there.
gore, but that's not. But as the people at the members of the Cast of Horror podcast will say, horror is not just the gore part.
True,
And
true.
so it is, it's a thriller. So I've seen you watch plenty of horror. It's just you don't like gore. And
No,
I,
I don't like gore.
yes. Um, and so what do you do after this? You said a little bit about your plans for 2026. Are there other things that you are planning, and what are you planning for the podcast for next year?
Okay, well, I can start with the short is that hopefully we hit 100% funding for this. So that'll cover all the post-production, which would be great. And also, some of that will go towards entering Shecky into a couple of film festivals. I have a few in mind to enter, and my director, Ali May, who did a phenomenal job, she also has a few that she thinks it would be really, really a good match for. And I think some of them are in Los Angeles, one or two are up here. I'm not sure where the others are, but if it gets in and it does well, then that would be great. And also, it's a great opportunity to meet other filmmakers because not a lot of them come to the house. That's the best way to put
Thank
it.
God.
And yeah, that too. And I can only meet so many people for coffee. So that's the plans for Shecky. I told you about the writing, about revising the two that I already have, and hopefully finishing the one. Um, and for the podcast, it was one of my goals for this year. I may actually follow through on it next year to finally have a theme song and maybe some outro music. But what's great is that every time I think I don't have a guest lined up, sometimes I get an email from a publisher or a lit agent saying, "Hey, I've got this person be a great guest for your show." And 9 times out of 10, they are. I mean, we've had to say no to people because the material they were writing didn't fall into the category of creative. That we had someone who wanted to write about, I think it was like about dealing with medical issues, and that really wasn't a thing that I didn't think was a good match. But we've had people who've written memoirs and people who also have advice about writing. So a few books of that nature we've had on the show before, and I just love talking to writers because everybody has a different story and everybody's book has different topics and materials, and like I said, everybody seems to enjoy it.
Well, speaking of books, anyone who has read your compilation of interviews, the three
Mm.
volumes of it, should know how I want to come close to ending this, which is to say, so Paul, what is your favorite pie and why?
What is my favorite pie and why? I would have to say the two that I like the most are pumpkin and pecan. And why? Well, just because they taste good and because I like to make them. But I also like to make all other kinds, and as you know, so you get to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Uh, but because I remember when I was putting the interview questions together, I wanted to have something that was unique to the interview, but also that wasn't hokey or cliched. And originally was thinking like, what's your favorite dessert? And that just seemed kind of vague. And I love to make pies. And so I started asking people. I'd ask all these. writing-based questions. And then the 11th question of the interview was like, what's your favorite kind of pie? And I had so many people said, I've never been asked that in a writing interview before. And so some people thought it was the best question they've ever gotten in an interview. But that's what I like to make. I mean, I'm totally open to a lot of other kinds of pies. Chocolate silk, lemon meringue, key lime. Uh, I've even like printed out new recipes that I want to try. Like one is something like oatmeal black bottom pie or something like that. But yeah, those are all part of the Go Ahead and Ask books that we're coming up on. Actually, it's 11 years ago is when I did the initial set of interviews with all the script consultants and filmmakers and other writers. And that spread to from 50 to just over 100 interviews. And I condensed all of them into 3 books, and they're available on Amazon.
Well, I have two final requests. One is, can you please remind our guests again about where they can support you with the crowdfunding?
Certainly, it is Indiegogo, Indiegogo, and you want to put in the search engine SHECKY, SHECKY, post-production. That is where you'll find, that'll take you to the site. And like I said, as we're recording this, we're at 68% funded, and we still have about a month and a half to go. So we'd love, anything you can contribute. If you can't, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's fine. But if you can, and again, if you're a big supporter of the indie filmmaking community, the screenwriting community, and you just love, the idea of watching a short where a guy tells really the same terrible jokes over and over again, this is the short for you.
Perfect, perfect. And my second request is, can you please give us the outro?
Sure. I will be happy to do so. Thank you so much for having me on today. It was a pleasure to be on the other side of the interview setup. Viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. As we talked about over the course of the show, social media, my screenwriting blog at it's maximumz.blog. For Twitter, it's at maximum_z, and for Blue Sky and Instagram, it's at Pez Screenwriting. And this show also has its own account on Twitter. It's at Podcast CWL. It's also at Podcast CWL on Blue Sky. And it also mentioned my Go Ahead and Ask books. Those are the ones on Amazon. Like I said, that's Chris. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy. Please contribute to the SHECKY Post-Production Indiegogo Fund. And most importantly, go write something.